Tanya Brooks had been working at Glow Haven for nearly 4 years, but to most of the customers, she may as well have been part of the wallpaper. A 32-year-old black woman with caramel-toned skin, honey brown eyes, and a calm but firm voice, she carried herself with quiet dignity, even when ignored, talked down to, or mistaken for the janitor. The store sat on the corner of Peachtree and 11th in Midtown Atlanta, an upscale part of the city where housewives arrived in Teslas and CEOs browsed $300 eye creams with gold-tipped applicators. Tanya didn't mind the luxury. She enjoyed the artistry of makeup, the chemistry behind skincare. What she didn't enjoy were the whispers, the fake smiles, the way customers would bypass her to ask her white coworkers for help, even when Tanya was standing right in front of them. "Excuse me," one woman said just last week, waving a finger in Tanya's face. "Do you even work here?" She'd smiled politely, as always. "Yes, ma'am. I'm the assistant floor manager. How can I help you?" That woman had recoiled, muttered something about attitude, and walked away. Tanya had learned to let it slide. Her mother used to say, "The world will try to paint you invisible, baby. Your job is to remind them you're still here." So she stayed, day after day, blending foundations and matching lip shades, while silently absorbing the weight of judgment. It was a Thursday, rainy and gray, when everything changed. The bell above the door chimed gently, and Tanya looked up from the display she was organizing. A woman stepped inside, her movements frantic and uncoordinated, like she'd just escaped a nightmare. She was white, blonde hair tangled and wet, a red designer coat stained with something dark. Blood? Tanya froze. The woman stumbled forward, clutching her bag to her chest like it was her lifeline. Her eyes darted around the store. When they landed on Tanya, she didn't look away. "Help me," she whispered. "Please." "They're coming." Tanya didn't hesitate. "Come with me," she said, grabbing the woman's arm and leading her toward the back of the store. She pushed open the storage room door, guiding her inside. The woman collapsed onto a stack of cardboard boxes, trembling. Tanya closed the door, turned the lock, and whispered, "Stay here. Don't make a sound." She turned just in time to hear the bell chime again. 2 men entered. They wore dark hoodies and soaked jeans. One had a tear down his sleeve. The other's shoes left muddy footprints on the polished floor. Their faces were partially obscured by masks, not medical ones, but thick black fabric pulled high over their noses. Tanya's heart thudded, but her face remained calm. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" she asked. The taller one, wide shoulders, pale eyes, stepped forward. "We're looking for someone." "A blonde. She came in here." Tanya tilted her head. "You sure?" "I haven't seen anyone fitting that description." "She's bleeding," the other one snapped. "Wearing red." Tanya narrowed her eyes. "I clean the floors myself. No blood here. You two gonna buy lipstick or just drip on my tile?" It was a risk sarcasm, but she needed to keep control. The tall one looked around, eyes scanning each aisle. Tanya stepped slightly to the left, blocking the hallway to the back. "This is private property," she said. "Unless you're planning on spending $400 on collagen serum, I suggest you leave before I call security." The 2 men exchanged a look. Then, slowly, they turned and walked back out into the rain. Tanya locked the door behind them, hand shaking. 10 minutes passed before she dared to unlock the storage room. The woman inside was sobbing now, silently, her makeup smeared and knuckles white. "My name's Tanya," she said gently. "You're safe now." The woman looked up, her voice barely audible. "Emily. Emily Wallace." The name hit like a brick. Tanya knew that name. Emily Wallace, the wife of Richard Wallace, one of Atlanta's biggest real estate moguls. His face had been on billboards all over town. His name was whispered in business circles with both reverence and fear. "What happened to you?" Tanya asked softly. But Emily just shook her head. "I can't go to the police. He'll find me." "Who?" Tanya leaned in. Emily looked up, eyes wild. My husband. Rain hammered against the windowpane like relentless fingers trying to claw their way in. The street outside Tanya's apartment was awash in dark reflections, with asphalt shimmering under flickering streetlights, shadows slithering across brick walls like memories refusing to die. Inside, the air was heavy with tension. Tanya leaned against the windowsill, arms crossed, her gaze fixed on the woman curled up on her couch, Emily. Emily had finally fallen asleep, though uneasily. Even in slumber, her brows furrowed, her fists clenched around the edges of the blanket like she was afraid sleep might let her go somewhere unsafe. Tanya couldn't stop staring. She had seen a lot in her life: corruption, lies, betrayals, but there was something raw and visceral about Emily's fear. It wasn't the fear of losing a job or facing public humiliation. It was the primal fear of being hunted. Tanya stepped quietly to the kitchen, flicking on a kettle. The silence was unsettling. Her own thoughts raced. Who the hell was this woman? And what the hell had she gotten herself into? Emily stirred as the kettle began to whine. Her eyes blinked open, wild, distant. "Where am I?" she whispered hoarsely, her voice barely audible over the boiling water. "You're safe," Tanya said gently, placing a steaming mug of tea into her trembling hands. "You're in my apartment. You showed up at my door soaked and terrified. Remember?" Emily nodded slowly. I remember a little. You're the journalist, right?" Tanya hesitated. "I used to be. Now I'm mostly freelance. But that's not important right now. What's important is you telling me what the hell is going on." Emily looked down at the tea. Her fingers trembled so violently she had to set the mug down. She closed her eyes. "He's looking for me." "Who?" "My husband," she said, her voice cracking like thin glass. "Richard. He's not who he says he is. None of them are." Tanya sat down across from her, suddenly more alert. "Them?" Emily nodded. "There's a group. They pretend to be part of a charity. Women's safety. But it's all a lie. It's a front. Behind closed doors, it's something else. He has influence. Judges, police, maybe even politicians. I overheard a phone call. I saw what he did to that girl, what they all did." Tanya's pen was already in hand. She clicked it once and opened a small notebook, one she always kept for emergencies. Emily's words were slow at first, hesitant, but as she spoke, the dam broke. "They have cameras. In the rooms. They drug women. Record them. Use it as leverage. Sometimes they just disappear." I didn't believe it at first. I told myself it wasn't what I thought it was. Until I saw her die. "Who?" Her name was Lydia. She tried to leave. She screamed. Richard told me she was delusional, that she'd overdosed. But he lied. I saw the footage. Emily's hands gripped her own arms as if trying to keep herself from unraveling. "I found the files. On a hard drive he kept in a locked drawer. Dozens of them. I copied them. Hid the USB. That's why they're after me." Tanya stared at her, stunned. This was more than a domestic dispute. This was a web of power, manipulation, and murder. Tanya stood, pacing. "You can't stay here. If what you're saying is true, they'll find you." Emily looked up, her eyes glassy. "I don't have anywhere else to go. I already tried the police. One of them called Richard 5 minutes after I left the station." "Jesus." Tanya ran a hand through her hair. Okay. We'll go to someone I trust. A contact. He works in encrypted data recovery. If the USB's real, he can extract everything. We leak it to the press. Public exposure is the only thing that might protect you." Emily didn't respond. She stared blankly into the corner of the room. Tanya followed her gaze and saw the small, blinking light of the security camera she had installed years ago. "Wait." Tanya crossed the room and unplugged it. "What?" Emily said. "If they've tapped my Wi-Fi, they could have seen you." A chill swept through both women. Hours passed. The city outside slowly quieted. Tanya sat at her desk, loading files from the USB Emily had retrieved. She was only halfway through the directories, video files, logs, correspondence, when a soft knock rattled the front door. Emily jumped to her feet. "Don't," Tanya whispered. She peered through the peephole. A man stood outside. Dark coat, hands in pockets. He wasn't moving, just standing there like a shadow waiting for permission to come in. Then he tilted his head upward and looked directly into the peephole. Tanya stepped back, her breath catching. "Do you recognize him?" she whispered. Emily peered past her. Her face went pale. "That's one of them. His name is Collins. He was at the compound." Tanya didn't wait. She grabbed her bag, pulled Emily by the wrist. Out the fire escape. Now, the night outside was thick with fog. Rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the cold was razor-sharp. Tanya's car was 2 blocks away. They moved fast, dodging shadows, ducking into alleyways. Every light felt like a spotlight. Every pedestrian felt like a tale. By the time they reached the car, Emily was crying. "Keep it together," Tanya muttered as she unlocked the door. "We're almost there." But as soon as the car started, Tanya's phone lit up. Unknown number. She didn't answer. Instead, she opened a secure texting app. "Unknown, you shouldn't have taken her. You don't know what you're doing." Tanya threw the phone onto the seat. "They're tracking us." They drove for nearly an hour, headed out of the city. Tanya kept glancing in the rearview mirror, her grip white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Emily sat silently beside her, clutching her knees to her chest. They stopped at a roadside motel, miles away from where anyone would think to look. Inside, Tanya locked the door, drew the curtains, and turned on white noise from her laptop to mask their voices. Emily curled up in the corner of the bed. "Thank you," she whispered. Tanya didn't respond. She sat at the desk, staring at the USB drive. She hadn't seen all the files yet, but she'd seen enough. Enough to know they were in deeper than she ever imagined. The motel room was quiet, but Tanya's mind was a thunderstorm. Her laptop buzzed softly, the fan whirring as the files slowly decrypted. Each one was a fresh wound, videos of women in states of confusion, resistance, and horror. Some faces were blurred, others not. Names were listed in text files, along with timestamps and payments. And one file in particular froze Tanya cold. Subject: Emily Voss. Status: compromised. Under watch. She closed the laptop slowly and turned toward the bed. Emily was asleep again, but not peacefully. Her hands clutched the pillow like a lifeline. Tanya could see the sweat glistening on her brow. She couldn't sleep. Not now. Not while knowing they were being hunted. At 3:41 a.m., Tanya stepped outside, her hoodie pulled up and her breath visible in the chilled air. The parking lot was empty, no sign of Collins or any dark vehicles. She checked her phone. No new messages. She called one person she hadn't spoken to in years. Nico. The voice on the other end groaned. "Tanya? It's been 3 years? You only call when things go to hell." "They already have. I need a secure line, data dump, and a burner. Now." "Jesus. What did you get yourself into this time?" "Just meet me. No questions." "You still in Silverwood?" He sighed. "Always. I'll send a location." "Come alone." Tanya hung up and returned to the room. Emily was sitting up now, her eyes red-rimmed. "Where were you?" "Getting us help." They left the motel before sunrise, taking back roads and dirt trails. Tanya drove fast, but careful. Emily didn't ask questions. She just watched the trees blur past, like she was trying to forget everything behind them. Silverwood was a ghost town in the early morning. Rusted gas stations, boarded-up shops, and silence. Tanya pulled into a scrapyard behind a barbed wire fence. Nico was already waiting. He was tall, tanned, with a leather jacket and hands that always looked like they'd just fixed an engine. "This her?" he asked, nodding at Emily. "Yeah, you weren't kidding." She looks like she just stepped out of a war zone. She kind of did. They stepped inside Nico's warehouse. Inside, computers lined the walls. Surveillance monitors, routers, encryption servers. Tanya handed over the USB. You need to copy everything, but not online. No cloud. Local only. Can you isolate it? Nico raised an eyebrow. You brought me the Holy Grail or a death wish? Both. He got to work. Emily sat silently, watching the screens flicker. Tanya placed a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. We're going to take them down. Hours later, Nico turned to them, pale. Tanya, you didn't tell me you had this. What? These aren't just random creeps. One of the donors is on the state board. There's a senator. A judge. This is blackmail, trafficking, and bribery. All in one directory. Emily whispered, that's why they want me dead. Nico nodded grimly. If you leak this, they won't just come after you. They'll burn everything you love. Then we make sure the whole world sees it. Nico paused. I know someone. A hacker. Name's Jasper. Lives off-grid. But he can build a time-deploy leak, auto-send to global media if anything happens to either of you. Set it up. While Nico prepared the package, Tanya set another plan in motion. We give them a decoy. We tell them Emily's going to meet with a lawyer in the city. They show up, we get it on film. I have contacts at the Courier. They'll run it if we hand them something explosive. Emily looked terrified. You want me to be bait? I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you could handle it. But you won't be alone. I'll be there. Nico will monitor the comms. And Jasper will have our failsafe running. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, let's burn them. The decoy meeting was scheduled at a rooftop cafe in downtown Atlanta. Tanya and Emily arrived disguised, wigs, sunglasses, new clothes. Cameras were hidden in flower pots and under tables. Nico monitored everything from a van 3 blocks away. They waited. And then at 1:27 p.m., Collins appeared. Not alone. 2 others flanked him. Suits, sunglasses, earpieces. Not cops. Not bodyguards. Enforcers. He sat across from Emily like it was a casual lunch. You should have stayed quiet, he said calmly. And let you destroy more women? Collins smirked. You don't understand who we are. Tanya stepped in. Actually, we do. Smile for the camera. Dirtbag. Suddenly, sirens. Police surrounded the area. Collins and his men froze. Later, in the safety of Nico's bunker, Tanya scrolled through the media explosion. Headlines everywhere. Elite sex trafficking ring exposed. Senator tied to covert surveillance of women. Survivor comes forward with evidence. Emily watched silently. For the first time, peace flickered behind her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. You saved my life. Tanya shook her head. No. You saved your own. I just gave you the mic. As the sun rose over Silverwood, they both knew this wasn't the end. But it was the beginning of justice. The media storm had barely begun to calm when Tanya realized the fallout wasn't over. The exposure of the trafficking ring sent shockwaves through the country. High-profile resignations, midnight disappearances, and closed-door investigations followed within days. But Tanya knew how these things worked. Public outrage burned hot and fast, and when it faded, those with money and power rebuilt the walls. This time, she refused to let that happen. 3 days after the sting, Tanya received a text from an encrypted number. They know your name. Get out now. She froze. Then quickly scanned the message for metadata. Nothing useful. She opened her laptop and launched a dark web monitoring tool. Within seconds, her fears were confirmed. Her full name, address, and even photos from her past were being passed through underground forums. A bounty. $150,000. And below that, a chilling message. Silence the black girl before she talks again. She slammed the laptop shut. They're not finished with us. Emily, sitting across the table in Nico's bunker, looked up with hollow eyes. What do we do now? Tanya stared into the distance. jaw clenched. We hit them harder. While the public fixated on headlines, Tanya knew that half the iceberg remained hidden. Jasper, the off-grid hacker, had set up the automatic leak, but the files they'd released were only a fraction of the total dump. The rest was buried, encrypted with triple-layer protocols. "What are you looking for?" Nico asked her as he scrolled through lines of code. "There's someone missing," she replied. "A woman. Black. I remember her face. She was in one of the original thumbnails, but the video wasn't in the leak. Could be scrubbed. Or hidden." Jasper, speaking through a distorted voice call, said, "I found metadata pointing to a warehouse server. Midwest. Not just backups, live feeds." "Feeds?" Tanya's heart dropped. "They're still recording." The lead took them to a rusted industrial complex outside of Gary, Indiana. Tanya, Emily, and Nico drove in shifts, using burner cars and fake plates. The warehouse was shielded by a fake logistics company, Mirapack Distribution. No website. No real paper trail. But Jasper's coordinates didn't lie. They parked 3 blocks away and approached under the cover of night. Nico used a long-range jammer to cut all surveillance and communication signals. Inside, the warehouse was cold, clinical, and deeply disturbing. Multiple server towers hummed softly. Hidden behind thick glass walls were 3 rooms, each set up like hotel suites. Cameras mounted in corners. Audio feeds. Furniture placed to look natural. But it was a prison. Emily gasped. "There, watching them. Live." Tanya moved to the nearest terminal and began pulling files. Videos played automatically, each one a fresh horror. Women, drugged or dazed, being interviewed. Some barely coherent. And behind it all, the same voice kept appearing in the logs. Dr. Franklin Kerr. Tanya stared at the screen. That name had never shown up before. A search through hospital databases revealed that Kerr was a top trauma psychologist working for elite institutions. Publicly, he advocated for women's health. Privately, he was a monster. Jasper chimed in, "He's been laundering data through a medical charity. Looks like he's profiling the women before they're even abducted." Tanya whispered, "That's why the selection seemed random." It wasn't. They were scouting them like merchandise. "Worse," Nico said. "They're building psychological profiles. Figuring out who's easiest to break." Emily's voice cracked. "He interviewed me at a gala. Before all of this started. That was the final piece. They had their next target. To take Kerr down, they needed more than files. They needed a confession." Tanya came up with a plan. They'd trick Kerr into a meeting posing as donors to his medical charity. Tanya used a fake identity, building a social media profile and email history that looked years old. Jasper spoofed calls from an LA production studio claiming to fund trauma centers for women. Kerr responded within 24 hours. The meeting was set for a private club in downtown Chicago. Dressed in a sharp suit and sleek wig, Tanya entered the dim-lit bar with Emily at her side. Kerr was already seated, charming, silver-haired, and disturbingly polite. "Ms. Davis," he said, shaking Tanya's hand. "And this must be your associate." Emily kept her head low. Kerr sipped his scotch. "It's rare to meet women so passionate about recovery work. We're always looking for backers." Tanya smiled coolly. "We're not here for your charity. We're here to ask about Mirapack." Kerr's smile twitched. "Excuse me." Emily leaned forward. "Do you remember me, Doctor?" Kerr squinted. Recognition dawned, and his face darkened. Tanya pressed a button on her smartwatch. Live transmission to Jasper began instantly. "You've been recording women, profiling them, drugging them. You think no one sees it, but we see you now." Kerr stood, but Nico, dressed as a bartender, grabbed his arm. "Don't," Tanya said. "It's already streaming. The world's watching." Within 36 hours, Kerr's face was plastered across every major news outlet. Victims began coming forward. A class action lawsuit was launched. The medical board stripped him of his license. The warehouse was seized. The women in captivity were rescued. And still, Tanya couldn't rest. "They're only part of the puzzle," she told Emily. "But every piece we reveal helps break the whole machine." Emily nodded. "Then let's keep going." Tanya launched an organization called Echo Watch, a covert task force blending investigative journalism, cybersecurity, and survivor advocacy. Emily became its spokesperson. Together, they traveled the country, meeting survivors, helping them find their voices, and building a wave of pressure no government could ignore. But behind each success was a constant shadow, the knowledge that systems this deep didn't fall easily. Still, Tanya smiled as she stepped off the stage at their first major press conference. For once, power had a face like hers. And the world was finally listening. A year had passed since the night they unmasked Dr. Kerr. And yet, for Tanya, the fire hadn't faded, it had grown hotter, fueled by something deeper than justice. It was legacy. It was survival. It was the cry of every forgotten voice echoing through her soul. But as the world began to hail her a hero, the enemies she exposed were already rebuilding in silence. Because monsters don't vanish, they evolve. Tanya sat alone in the modest Echo Watch headquarters in downtown Atlanta, sipping cold coffee, eyes glazed over a screen. Then a ping. New secure message. No subject. Inside was a single line of text. "You missed one." Beneath it, a photo attachment, a black woman, late 20s, eyes red, handcuffed to a medical gurney in a room with padded walls. Tanya froze. Attached coordinates pointed to a private mental health facility in Vermont. She checked the metadata. Authentic. And then she saw the sender's IP tag. 404 NTK. That was Jasper's signature. But Jasper had vanished 3 months ago. Nico burst into Tanya's office an hour later. "It's confirmed. Jasper's last known location was a digital dead end. But this file came from him. Or someone using his keys." Tanya's throat dried. Jasper had encrypted his servers so tightly that even the NSA couldn't break them. If someone else had access, it meant either betrayal or something worse. "Can we trace the facility?" "Already on it," Nico said, tossing a manila folder on the desk. "It's called Glenmar Institute. Registered to a shell company in Delaware, run by a holding firm in the Caymans." Emily entered behind him. "And guess who sits on the board?" "Who?" "Lawrence Venshire." Tanya's stomach turned. That name was familiar, too familiar. Venshire owns the news networks that tried to smear us after the Kerr case. And now, Emily added, he's invested in mental rehabilitation facilities for high-risk women. Translation. Tanya spat. Legalized disappearance. They had to move fast. Tanya decided to go in herself. Using a fake identity and medical records, she posed as a trauma patient, LaToya Simmons, diagnosed with borderline schizophrenia and PTSD. Emily and Nico created the backstory, falsified police reports, and fed them into public databases. 3 days later, she was committed. What she found inside Glenmar chilled her deeper than anything before. There were no therapy sessions. No treatment plans. Just quiet halls, drugged women, and locked rooms. Surveillance was constant, but subtle, mirrored panels hid lenses. The staff smiled too wide. And every night, a low-pitched humming filled the air through the vents. Tanya feigned breakdowns to explore further. On the 5th night, she found a utility hatch behind the laundry chute. She crawled through. What she discovered beneath the building made her blood run cold. It wasn't just a clinic. Beneath Glenmar was a full-scale biometric testing facility. Retinal scans, EEG monitoring, serum trials. Dozens of women, black and brown, restrained and wired to machines like lab rats. She saw the same woman from the file, the one in the original photo. Her name tag, Kira Miles. She was sedated, her arms bruised, IVs in both hands. Tanya took photos, heart racing. Then came the voice. "You're not staff." She turned to find a man standing in the shadows. Bald, surgical gloves. Calm as a priest. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, stepping closer. "And you're not going to leave." Tanya ran, slid past the lab door, ripped the fire alarm lever. Alarms blared. Strobes flashed red. Chaos erupted. She darted through the maze of hallways, dragging Kira's limp body over her shoulder. Her cover was blown. Staff flooded out, shouting. Suddenly, 2 black SUVs smashed through the outer gates. Nico and Emily. "Go! Go!" Nico screamed, throwing open the van doors. They hauled Tanya and Kira in, speeding off as gunshots rang behind them. Smoke, alarms, and fury trailed them as they disappeared into the night. Kira awoke hours later in a safe house. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I was a grad student. They told me it was a sleep study. I never left. I thought I was going crazy." Tanya held her hand. "You're not crazy. You're a weapon. And they were trying to break you." Emily uploaded the photos, the footage, the scans. Within 48 hours, EchoWatch released the Glenmar dossier online. The media tried to bury it. Venshire's legal team threatened everyone. But the internet roared louder. The UN opened an investigation. Protesters stormed Glenmar's gates. Survivors sued. Lawmakers demanded hearings. The people were no longer asleep. Still, Tanya couldn't shake the feeling that Jasper had left her breadcrumbs. One night, she accessed an old secure channel. A new message appeared. "You're not done yet. They're watching from higher up. Look for Project Monarch." Attached, a black and white photo of military files and what looked like child patients in lab gowns. Nico stared at it. "This goes deeper than we thought." Tanya leaned forward. "Then we go deeper." EchoWatch expanded into 6 cities. Survivors became investigators. Donors came forward. Whistleblowers leaked thousands of documents. But with each victory, the enemy changed its face. Glenmar was just one head of a hydra. And now, Tanya knew, they weren't just fighting men. They were fighting a system. But she wasn't afraid. As she stared into the camera at the next press conference, she said the words that would spark a national movement. "They called me broken, dangerous, disposable. But I'm still here. And I'm not done." Tanya never imagined the Glenmar case would uncover something bigger. But when an anonymous envelope led her to declassified CIA files marked Project Monarch, she realized the truth was far darker than anyone feared. The documents described mind control experiments on black children, mostly girls, during the Cold War. Electroshock, sensory deprivation, obedience training. It wasn't fiction. It was buried history, and it was still happening. A survivor named Cassandra Bishop, once known as Subject KM 47, confirmed it. She'd been part of the program in 1973. "They called it training," she said, "but it was psychological warfare." Her story matched the files. Tanya and Nico followed the trail to a powerful name, Lawrence Venshire, billionaire media mogul. He funded wellness centers across the country, all quietly experimenting on patients under new names. EchoWatch published everything: survivor testimony, classified evidence, financial links. The backlash was explosive. Media coverage, protests, congressional hearings. But the cost was high. Cassandra's house was set on fire. Tanya was followed. And Emily, her friend who once saved her from the Glenmar attack, was kidnapped. Tanya found Emily in an abandoned clinic run by Venshire's company. Sedated, prepped for experimentation. Tanya broke in, saved her, and filmed everything. That footage? It broke the dam. Venshire was arrested. The centers were shut down. The survivors were finally heard. Years later, Tanya stood outside a school named after Cassandra Bishop. EchoWatch had grown. Glenmar was gone. But the war for truth? Still ongoing. A final letter from Jasper, sent automatically, read, "You did it. But truth always has another layer. Stay sharp." Tanya smiled. Because now she wasn't alone.